My name is Thejna. I'm coming from Kollam district, Kerala. I'm 27 years old. I completed my PG and B.Ed. After completing B.Ed course, I was diagnosed B-cell ALL, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, in November 2021.
How old were you?
25.
25. Okay, okay.
My first phase treatment was in the hospital, Kim's Hospital, Thiruvananthapuram. And after induction phase, my MRD didn't become negative. So they told us to do bone marrow transplantation. For that, we went to Amrita Institute of Medical Science, Kochi. In 2022 May, I underwent bone marrow transplantation, and it was fine up to 1 year. After 1 year, CNS relapse occurred.
Okay.
So our doctor told us to do a CAR T therapy. So at that time, T therapy was not available in India. It was only in abroad. So we were told to go Israel for doing this therapy. So we decided to go, but fortunately, in the month of October 2023, our government approved CAR T cell therapy in India. Then after that, on January 1st, 2024, I underwent CAR T cell therapy. Then everything was fine. Then after 1 month, bone marrow test was done. And then my MRD was negative.
Oh, amazing.
Thejna John is one of the first beneficiaries of India's latest breakthrough in cancer treatment, CAR T cell therapy. She joins a growing list of cancer patients across the world who were written off by doctors and then made an almost miraculous recovery thanks to this treatment. What happens in CAR T cell therapy? Well, T cells, which are a kind of white blood cells, are collected from a patient's body. The cells are programmed or re-engineered to identify and attack cancer cells. The programmed cells are then infused back into the body of a patient. Think of a high-octane action film and your body as a city under attack from a particularly vicious supervillain. A group of civilians are chosen, they're taken to a training center, they're trained or rather programmed to become expert snipers. Think high precision guns, high magnification optics, the works. Their job is to come back to the city, find and terminate the supervillain. Well, that kind of simplistically describes what's happening here. Now, the CAR T cell therapy treatment was approved by the US FDA way back in 2017. But it was only in October last year that India approved it as treatment for some specific forms of blood cancer. It's a phenomenal breakthrough and a big ray of hope for India, which ranks third after China and the US in terms of cancer cases. But as with any evolving form of medical treatment, especially something as revolutionary as this, there are more questions than answers right now. How effective and efficacious is CAR T cell therapy? How high or low are the fears of a relapse? Will it treat other forms of cancer? Most critically, the treatment is priced at above 40 lakh rupees in India, a fraction of what it costs in the US, but way above what many Indians can afford. How will the treatment be made more affordable? We try to get you all the answers in this episode with my colleague ET's Pharma guru Vikas Dandekar, Shirish Arya of ImmunoAct, which is spearheading the evolution and spread of this treatment in India, and Dr. Hasmukh Jain, a hemato-oncologist and a pioneer in this field. It's the 14th of March. I'm Anirban Chaudhary, your Sutradhar for today. This is the Morning Brief.
It all started in a US university, and its origins are credited to Dr. Carl June. He is known to be the pioneer in CAR T therapies.
That was Vikas. And here's Carl June, describing the results of his discovery in a TED talk 4 years ago.
The result is a chimera, a fantastic fire-breathing creature from Greek mythology with a lion's head, a goat's body, and a serpent's tail. So we decided that the paradoxical thing that we had created with our B cell antibodies, our T cells, carrier, and the HIV Trojan horse should be called chimeric antigen receptor T cells, or CAR T cells.
Here's Vikas again.
Somehow, when cancer cells enter the body, they always have this ability to hide it from the weapons that actually destroy them. So it's a very stealth attack. But once you take out the blood cells and program it to identify those cancer cells and transfuse it back into the body, now the body knows that these are the cancer cells hidden inside the body, and then they actually get identified and the body starts recovering. Once all the fronts of cancer treatment is over, like chemo, as in like giving medicines to fight cancers, or immunotherapy or surgery, bone marrow transplant, all of that goes. And then if there is a relapse, this is seen as the next line. So it's the final frontier to combat cancer.
So I believe the initial development of CAR T cell therapies, I think, focused largely on this very common cancer which affects
Yes.
children called
Yes.
lymphoblastic leukemia, acute
That-
lymphoblastic leukemia.
Yes,
So-
that's correct.
So how did it sort of has it evolved from there, and how would you tell me that journey a little bit?
Oh, yeah. Oh, so that's a very interesting story of a little girl who was just 5 years and was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia in 2010, Emily Whitehead. And all the options were chosen and nothing worked. And that was when, she was tried on this particular therapy. She was enrolled as part of a clinical trial, again, as part of investigational studies. And it worked. There were no signs of relapse. So it's a phenomenal case of success, not seen so far, where she didn't have any such symptoms at all. So it's worked wonderfully in the case of Emily Whitehead. But I must remind you that even now, with all of those positive signals, the doctors are really not very clear about calling her cured yet, just because of the intrinsic character of cancer to lie low and strike when everything looks normal. So we need to be very careful. That's why the overall response rate, overall survival rate, all these are to be studied on a longitudinal basis across geographies, across products, with a survival rate which they can actually say that, okay, this is something that looks fine, 3 to 5 years. Probably after that also, it's a little early to, because as I said, the therapy itself is so new that it will take some time. In the case of Emily Whitehead, we know it's been like a very long time, 12, 13 years, and she's absolutely doing fine. So it will be too early to say that this is the holy grail and cancer is captured. What we can say is that it's a phenomenal next move.
ImmunoAct, a gene and cell therapy organization born in IIT and founded by an IIT professor called Rahul Purwar, is leading the CAR T cell story in India. In fact, it was ImmunoAct's treatment protocol on CAR T cell therapy that received the approval from the Indian Pharma regulator in October last year. Here's Shirish Arya, its head of business development and corporate strategy.
So the journey of ImmunoAct actually started as an academic project at IIT Bombay. So this is in 2013 when Dr. Rahul Purwar returned back from his postdoctorate at Harvard and joined as professor at IIT Bombay in the bioscience bioengineering department. And there he's been working at CAR T, and mind you, CAR T that time even in US was a very, very niche area to work on, right? So it was a very bold move on his part that he took this massive challenge. So till 2013 to 2018 were the initial years of preclinical studies, animal studies, translational research, getting some of the MOUs done with likes of Tata Memorial Hospital. Through much of this research was done through grants and different funding mechanisms. In 2018, once the patent was filed and there was promise that was visible, that's the time we realized, or he realized, that it needs a commercial vehicle to go forward. And this is the birth of ImmunoAct, which was incubated within IIT Bombay itself. And the licenses and the patents were licensed to ImmunoAct so that they can carry the research forward. Now, last few years, we've been involved in commercializing the product, sponsoring the clinical trials, raising funds, setting up the infrastructure, commercializing, and doing this commercial tie-ups that we are doing now with different various hospitals. So this is sort of a snapshot of how ImmunoAct has been so far.
It's a massive breakthrough in the cancer treatment paradigm. If you can simplify for our listeners about who are the people who can actually benefit from this, what kind of a potential do you see going forward? Is it something that you have tie-ups with around 40 hospitals right now? What all patients should be looking forward to?
Sure. So as you know, the drug is approved for relapse and refractory leukemia and lymphoma. That's the sort of the primary goal or primary target for this drug. Now, in India, unlike again the Western countries, when we say relapse refractory, right? So second line of treatment, third line of treatment, there's a lot of lines of treatment which are not available in India. So a lot of monoclonal antibodies, which are typically second line of treatment, third line of treatment, available to many of the advanced countries, we don't have those options. Or even if they're available, they're actually, the total cost of those treatments are on a complete cycle basis is actually more than what we are offering as our CAR-T. So effectively, what we are seeing is that the patients can access this practically from as a first line after the relapse has happened, or they are sort of refractory. So it's a decision that the hospitals, physicians, patients need to take together, taking in account of medical technical aspects, but also taking in account of the financial toxicity of the entire treatment. Right. That's sort of point number one. Point number two is, now we have tied up with 40 plus hospitals, which are the leading hospital centers for hemato-oncology, including very advanced bone marrow transplant or very deep experience in bone marrow transplant. So this is a very experienced team of clinicians and nursing staff and other related functions. What we are trying to now do with them is, instead of just trying to expand horizontally, we are now trying to work with them on the deeper aspect of how the drug really behaves, right? So right from the screening of the patient to the right counseling. So some patients will benefit more, some patients will benefit less. For example, in leukemia, we've seen the responses are more robust. In lymphoma, they are more subdued. Age plays a role, previous lines of treatment plays a role. So there are multiple complex things that play a role. And not all of them are very well understood, to be honest. We are also learning, the doctors are also learning globally, not just in India. We are, of course, much younger in India, but even in countries where this has been in available for last 5-6 years, they are also publishing new data every year. So we are working with the clinicians now to ensure that we do the right patient selection, we do the right patient counseling, they understand the risk and the benefits of this, the risks of this, the costs of this, the benefits of this, all aspects of this. As you know, because the biggest advantage of this drug and the biggest sort of differentiator of this drug compared to what is available is the persistence, right? So not only it's effective in terms of its overall response at the time of infusion, but it's long-term persistence. So we need to understand, monitor the long-term results, long-term overall survival, long-term results, long-term persistence of CAR-T in the concerned patient.
To get deeper into the treatment itself, Vikas and I spoke to Dr. Hasmukh Jain, a professor and hemato-oncologist at India's biggest cancer research and treatment institute, the Tata Memorial Centre. Dr. Jain has earlier said that the CAR T-cell treatment has a remarkable 70% response rate.
So the 70% response rate, when we say, we mean that when you give the therapy, at the end of 4 weeks, there is a 70% chance that you will have a response, which means either the tumor will completely disappear or there will be more than 50% reduction in the tumor. So that is what we say as a response rate. This is the earliest indicator of activity, but this does not necessarily mean that all of these patients will have long-term cure. Now, what needs to be seen or what remains to be seen is that how many of these patients will eventually have a long-term cure, which generally we take 2 years as a time point. So if you have had a response and if you have sustained that for 2 years, that is when we say you have been cured of your disease. There is a possibility that some of these patients would relapse, which has been seen even in the earlier trials. Why we say the 70% itself is remarkable is because with regular therapy in the same patient population, that is patients who have had relapsed disease or refractory disease, particularly acute lymphoblastic leukemia and lymphoma, that is where this product has been tested. In the same group of patients, when you use a regular chemotherapies, your transplants, the response rate is only about 25%. So there's already a threefold increase in the responses, even at the day 28 time point. But of course, the final proof of efficacy would be the durability. And for that, we'll have to wait some more time to see how this holds on.
Also, one of the points that came out in one of the IIT updates was about the neurotoxicity. Is there an edge that you see here as against the existing therapies in the West?
Now, to explain about neurotoxicity, it basically means it could start with as simple as somebody finding it difficult to write, difficult to name people. That is how it generally starts off. It can evolve into somebody developing seizures, so they can have fits while after they have received the product. They could become drowsy, they could become unconscious. So the extent of this toxicity with the approved products in some of the other seen in about 40 to 50% of the patients. But the unique thing about this, our humanized CAR T-cell therapy was that we did not encounter any form of neurotoxicity. And there is reason for this. It's in the way the product has been developed. So the incidence of that was very low, and it was only seen in leukemia patients. Again, that is
Okay.
much lower compared to what is seen with the other products. So yeah, definitely safety is the advantage.
We have in India, I have read somewhere 25,000 B cell lymphomas coming up every year. So, if we are to actually make this available to the large population that we have here in this country, what kind of a capacity will we need? And secondly, will it be even for more specific patients?
Yes. The good thing about the whole journey is that we have developed the platform. We have gone through the whole process. Now we have the platform in place. We have the science clearly established, understood, tested. The next steps is that you now introduce different proteins into the cell which can target different cancer cells. So the next one, which is already approved globally, is the one which targets multiple myeloma. And likewise, there are a lot of other research happening where the different other cancer targets have been identified and work is going on. Now, focusing on just CD19 and just for CD19 directed CAR T-cell therapy, as you rightly said, there are potentially about 20 to 25,000 patients every year in this country. And because you have a complex manufacturing process, this is not like an off-the-shelf therapy where you could just stock the drug and then you can dispense it off. For every patient, the product generation has a complex process. Therefore, we need a lot of, expansion of the manufacturing capabilities as well, which is going to happen gradually over a period of time. So I think right now the capabilities are such that we could cater to about 300 to 350 patients, but the plans are on to increase this capacity. And as more and more companies come in the space, hopefully we'll be able to cater to a significant number of these patients.
And more companies will come in for sure. Remember, there are at least 6 to 7 products already on sale in the US, made by companies such as Novartis, Gilead, Janssen Biotech, and Bristol Myers Squibb. In India, Dr. Reddy's has a CAR T-cell therapy plan in the works. Reliance is doing research in this field, and Biocon has a program called Immunil, which too is in its trial stages. While that's great news, the high costs of this treatment are a concern. Will that go down with the entry of more and more players? Not necessarily. Here's Vikas.
Look, there is a popular statement that you are one cancer prescription away from becoming a financially broke person. So here it is at a tenth of the US pricing. None of the US products are below 3.5, 4 crore at least. We are talking about 40, 50 lakh. But again, the brutal question is how many people really have that? And mind you, it's not like a silver bullet that it will be a guarantee for a cure. So that remains a challenge. And doctors do want to see a situation, and again, leading doctors do want to see a situation where it can be within the affordable limit, maybe a 5 lakhs, at that range. This is a very complicated science, difficult to understand when the blood is actually taken out, the apheresis process, and then to program it in a very hygienic sanitized facility and to re-infuse it inside the patient's body across many states. The face of it itself is it's very enormous challenge. And to do that, there is a time frame within which it should all happen. I think all of that adds up to the final cost. Having said all of that, doctors believe that, if the scale actually is found in a way that, it can be made for a wider range of patients in more facilities, that probably can come down.
Here's Shirish again with Vikas.
We need to work on two or three different fronts. One of them is that the scale economies is, as you know, because more than anybody else, economics is about scale. So there is a direct correlation on how quickly we can scale up, and the quicker we scale up, the quicker we can also benefit from the economies of scale and try to bring the cost down. So that's one aspect. One critical aspect is the economies. The second critical aspect is that we have to indigenize some of the input costs that we are incurring right now, which requires a lot of process development R&D, which requires working with a lot of other partners in the ecosystem, in the pharma ecosystem, with whom we can partner to bring some of the ingredients indigenized. Because as you know, 90% of the ingredients, consumables that we use today are all imported, right? So that adds to the cost, both the input cost, because they're coming from an advanced ecosystem, so their cost structures are different, and hence we need to work on multiple fronts on these.
Do you have plans to align with government hospitals where it can be available for the time being at a cheaper rate? Anything that can actually apply for patients who really cannot go to that level of 40 lakh rupees?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We are planning to work through an array of programs so that, we truly believe in accessibility and affordability. So we are trying to work through an array of programs. So yes, while private corporate sector and hospital, they are like early adopters, and they have been very aggressive in trying to adopt this technology through various means, including us, right? From our side, we have a strategic partnership with Tata Memorial Hospital, the premier institute. As you're aware, we did the clinical trials with them, but commercially also we are trying to expand the program significantly with them, right? So that's one area. We are working with various trust hospitals. So Adyar in Chennai, for example, another premier hospital, St. John's Memorial in Bangalore. We will work in due course with the likes of PGI Chandigarh. So we are looking at different hospitals, premier hospitals, premier in the sense that they are premier for cancer research or have a deep investment in cancer research. So we are working with them, and we have tried to give them pricing which sort of fits into their funding programs and their budgets. So we're trying to work with that. Beyond just the government hospitals, we are also working with the government of India, right? We have made representations to the health ministry and to other ministries as well, wherein some of these government schemes, say Ayushman Bharat, Rashtriya Arogya Nidhi, and how do we sort of bring that into our fold, wherein we participate in that, and where government participates, and so it becomes a public-private partnership between us, the government fundings, and some of these government institutes, where we all come together and make this drug accessible. So yes, so we are working on multiple fronts.
So two questions. One is about the survival benefits. Is this therapy something that can go on forever? Do you think there is a certain limit to which it can actually work, and there is a chance of a longer term relapse? Because when so much of money is being spent, people will have a higher expectation of
And
survival.
absolutely. So this is not the silver bullet to cancer cure. It's not 100% cancer cure. I want to be very clear about that. The overall long-term survival is a factor of many things. I think the key thing over here is that the delta or the advantage it gives to the current therapies, right, that are available to us, that delta CAR-T is significantly higher, head and shoulder higher than many other therapies. I think that's a point to note. The second thing is that the science of it, which is to use your own immune system and train it to fight the cancer, from a directional point of view, it's a right direction for science to go. Yes, this technology will evolve. Can we do better with dual targeting? How the products can be improved upon, what kind of combinations can be given. So there's a lot of research that will improve the results and efficacy over a period of time. But I think directionally, this has a lot of promise. This technology has a lot of promise.
So what is the minimum and what is the maximum that we can actually look at right now in terms of the survival benefits?
International literature suggests somewhere around 50 to 55% of long-term survival. And when I say long-term survival, over 3 years kind of a survival. So that's basically what the literature suggests. That's basically what we can expect.
One quick question, Dr. Rahul Purwar had mentioned about this Immuno Act and the Indian, efforts will help democratize cancer treatment so far, in a way that it can actually be made available to low and middle income countries as well. Do you have any efforts being made in that direction where the production of these therapies can be, spread across countries?
Yes. And we genuinely believe that the scale that India provides will help democratize and provide greater access. No different than what has happened in HIV, where India played a very big role, and no different from vaccines, where India played a very big role. So I think both areas where India has already played a very big role, we do genuinely think that cell and gene therapy India can play a very big role. Hopefully, ImmunoAct can play a role in that as well. We on our part are making tremendous efforts. In fact, much of our focus is not how to enter the advanced markets. Much of our focus is how do we enter the developing world, the global south, as we speak. That includes Middle East, we can service North Africa. We may not be able to go to each and every country because this is personalized drug. There are a lot of manufacturing complexities. But can we go into certain hubs? So South Africa is a hub, Latin America is a hub, Southeast Asia is a hub, Middle East is a hub, from where we can serve the region. So that's basically where our immediate efforts are.
Of the two patients Vikas interviewed for his latest story on CAR T-cell, Thejna, whom you just heard at the beginning of this episode, is recovering. But it's been barely 3 months since the therapy. She has to be on treatment and medication for 2 years. Every 3 months for a year, she'll undergo a bone marrow examination to check for relapse. After that, she'll be tested every alternate year. I said 2 patients, the other one had a relapse. He is critical. So there is a long way to go. But Vikas is very optimistic.
So, there is a term called progression-free survival. If there is no progression of a disease or, where it has actually relapsed or it has metastasized or spread to other tissues, that is seen as 5 years as a very big jump. Today, every single corporate in the world is actually focused on making cancer drugs. The indications have become so many. There are fast track approvals. The maximum budgets are being put on cancer treatment. So in a couple of years, I think we can see many of these programs come to market. And speaking to scientists also gives me a little bit of information that beyond leukemia also these drugs can work. So hopefully someday we will see something coming up on more prevalent diseases in India, cancers in India like lung cancer or breast cancer. So that's what. So it's a great start. We might not say that, it's like a 100% treatment magic that is happening, but there is a new enthusiasm and optimism with the rate of 60 to 95% is what I had actually found some time back. It is definitely outclassing most of the classical traditional cancer drugs or therapies.
And Vikas's optimism would be shared by thousands of patients like Thejna, who a few months back would have been rendered hopeless by their doctor's prognosis, but now have a new weapon to fight the emperor of maladies.
Actually, I'm very, very happy. I'm very grateful to all the scientists, doctors who work behind this big therapy. I hope that this would be a ray of hope for all the people who are struggling in this disease.
That's it for today. You were listening to this episode on The Morning Brief. It was produced by Sumit Pandey and sound designed by Amrit Reddy. The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday on a listening platform of your choice. Please like, share, and subscribe. And of course, keep listening. This is your host Anirban Chaudhary signing off. Have a good rest of the week. The clip used in this episode belongs to its owner. Credits are mentioned in the description.